Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you?
Good. So if you're watching us live, definitely type in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Today's topic is about boundaries. I'm super excited. All kinds of boundaries, not just like work, right? Work-life balance boundaries. How do you want to get it
All,
started?
yeah, all sorts of things. So, when I think about boundaries, I think about the fact that most of the people I know and most of the people that I work with, they are, it seems goofy to say they have kind hearts, but like that's it. And they want to help. They want to help more people. They want to help more clients. They say yes to a lot of things. And they don't really recognize that when they're saying yes to something, it means they're saying no to a host of other things.
Hmm.
And in the moment, it's so hard to say no. And so when you start to think through what are my boundaries? How do I set my boundaries? How do I keep my boundaries? What I think is important to remember is that you want to create a structure that allows you to or that goes against your left to your own devices, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like left to my own devices, I know that I will blow through my boundaries all day long. So I try to make sure that I have other structures in place so that I don't.
Okay.
And so does that make so yeah. So anyway, that's what's on my mind today. That's what we're going to talk about. It's been coming up a lot with my clients lately. So I thought
Hmm.
this would be a good place to talk about it a little more in depth with some more people.
Awesome, awesome. So, one of the things I just put on the screen is what are you saying yes to? Because by saying yes to something, you're also saying no to a whole bunch of other things. So that's just something to keep in mind. And so, around the subject of boundaries, you've talked about this, so it comes up with your clients. What are some of the most common issues that people are having?
So one of the things that I'm seeing right now is I have a client who works, she actually works for a company and her work hours used to be 2:30 in the morning until 11 a.m. That was her work hours. And now that she's working remotely, people are emailing her outside of work hours and she feels they expect a response, which may or may not be accurate, but that's her expectation. And so what used to be really clear set boundaries for her, she went to work, she did her job, she came
Mm-hmm.
home, then she was home. Now the time is being impacted as well as the space. She doesn't really have a dedicated office space right now, so she doesn't have the physical boundary of being in her office, and she also doesn't have the boundary around what's her time. What should she answer them? Are they expecting an answer from her? Should
Right.
she stay up? And what, like all of that's happening. So that's just something very specific that's happening now because of where we're at
Mm-hmm.
as a society at this moment. That was not a problem for her in the past.
So if you are watching this live or on the replay, let us know what kind of boundaries you're coming up against because of COVID-19. So, we're at home, we're not physically going into the office a lot, so there's that boundary that is, lost. And then there's the time boundary because we no longer have set office hours for some people that they're kind of being pushed, right? So they get this people emailing them outside of work hours. And Lisa, what do you say to that? What systems do you have in place to
So,
prevent kind of like that boundary pushing?
well, the first thing I asked her was, what are the expectations? Like, let's jump into some clear
Mhm.
communication. Who's emailing you? Is it your boss? Are they coworkers? And what is the expectation they get back to you? Like, just because I used to joke and say, well, just because someone sends you an email at 2 a.m. doesn't mean you have to respond. And then like that actually is her work time. So she does
Yeah.
kind of have to respond to them. But like just because someone sends you the email doesn't mean you have to respond. So the first thing that we looked at was what were the expectations? And
Mhm.
what did she have in her power to adjust those expectations? So for those of you who have employees right now, one of the things I highly recommend is that you have a very candid conversation with your employees around just because I email you at this time, that doesn't mean X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Or it does mean X, Y, or Z. Like, what do you expect from them? how can they build some structure in? So that was one of the things she went back to find out what was expected. And then based on that answer, we talked about turning the email off, putting the phone in airplane mode during certain times.
Absolutely.
She has to sleep, for goodness sakes. Like, she needs to sleep, and she was not. So, that was one of those pieces is, okay, you do need to sleep. So that was a part of it. The other thing we did about her office is, like, it's easy for me. I just close the door. When I'm done with my workday, I leave my office, close the door, and I'm done. She didn't have that. But what we did was shut her laptop.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And then she put on top of it a Post-it note that says, those signs, be back in 10 minutes.
Oh,
like,
okay.
She just put a sign on it that says, be back at 2 a.m. And then that was just a visual reminder for her. Office is closed. Go about your day at home. And so those are just two little
I
tricks.
cannot imagine starting my workday at 2 a.m. I don't know. That's like already a boundary issue for me. Like, I would never be able to do that job. Just even taking on something like that just sounds really difficult to me. Like, here's the opposite of your schedule.
Right. Yeah. Right. And be productive.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah. So that's one. That's just one of the ones that has come up recently. I think I know another one. I have a client who the boundaries of what she gets paid for and doesn't get paid for gets pushed a lot.
Okay, well, before we move on, let's go ahead and kind of, track on what we were talking about, because, you went really fast, and sometimes it's easy for you, but I just want to make sure that it's really clear for everybody else. So we're talking about different kinds of boundaries. So, one of the first things we talked about was the time boundaries. So that's why we have this on the screen of people emailing outside of work hours. And so it's not always as simple as just don't check your email during off hours, right? So it could be your boss, could be something urgent, could be your family, right? So you want to make sure that you know the expectation. That's what you were saying, right, Lisa?
Absolutely.
And then, another piece of the boundary is, aside from the time boundary, there's the physical boundary. So I like the descriptions you had of either just close your office door when you're done, or close your laptop. I like the, coming back to work at 2 a.m., even though not the 2 a.m. Coming back to work when it's time to come back to work, So I do love that visual. And you have a comment
here.
Freya.
Hi, Freya. Hey, Freya. So Freya is...
I have a client now, but can't wait to watch the whole thing later. Okay, so she's going to check it out later, Lisa, for what you have to say.
And I can't wait, Freya, until you check it out later too. So Freya is the person who keeps me mentally sane the most. She's my yoga instructor. And I love her dearly. And so I think she has one of the toughest jobs in the world, and that is to close my brain down periodically for me. So she helps me do that.
Oh, so nice, so nice. All right, so then we're moving on to another kind of boundary that gets pushed. And, we were talking about your pay gets pushed around. Okay.
A lot of the clients I work with are service-based. And so in particular, this person is a financial advisor. And she has a program where they'll work through the whole program, and then when they're done, she'll say, okay, I'm available for you for 30 days afterwards in case there's questions over the stuff that we've created. And then 31 days, 40 days, 6 months, people are still reaching her out. And another way that this will come up for people is, can I just pick your brain? And because we've heard that, right? How many times have you heard that?
People ask me that all the time. Somebody just asked me that last week.
Yeah. So you'll hear it that way. You'll hear, can I just pick your brain? Or in her case, I just have a quick question. And at what point do you say, oh, wait a minute, you've crossed the boundary? Our agreement was 30 days after the final product was delivered. And, and for everyone that, I think that line is different. I call it the resentment factor. If I am resenting answering your question, that means I should be paid for it. Like, for whatever reason that may be. But if I am not giving that information to you freely and happily, it means I'm feeling taken advantage of. Whether that was your intent or not, that's my feeling. And that's when I know I've had a boundary crossed.
Okay.
One of the things I probably never communicated ahead of time. So,
well, like, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if you do communicate that ahead of time, because what happens, I'll just tell you. So when somebody says, Molly, I really want to pick your brain. I have some marketing issues. I really need your help. But that's what I do. So I actually, I have an intake form so I can see, what they need. And then, on that form is actually a section where it has, that I realize that it's worded better than this, but basically it's okay, I realize there's an investment to working with you, and I'm prepared to pay for or invest in myself as a result of that. And so if they're not checking that, then they typically don't even fill out the form, and they don't follow up. And I understand that is, I've set the boundary and just sort of set the expectation of, here, if you want to schedule a meeting, here's how we can do it. But, our time is precious, right? So we don't want to just, feel like we're up to the brim with resentment. So, I mean, for me, it's just letting them know ahead of time. And I say to them, hey, I realize that you're looking for some marketing help, but you're not really ready to invest in yourself. And I invite people to come to my Women Connecting Women event on Mondays. It's a free virtual community connection. And at that event, I give tons of marketing away for free to whoever has those questions, because that's the kind of forum it is. And it's my time to be giving to the community. But aside from that, if they're asking for one-on-one time, I do say, I'm probably going to meet with people who want to become my clients first, rather than just anybody, right?
Exactly. And so you're super clear about how does that fit into your business model. I think on my end, I'll do something very similar. Like, there's a check bar. I'm able to invest. I am able to find funds to invest, and I'm only looking for free help at this time. Like, those are the options. Yeah. And then when it's I'm only looking for free help at this time, I just shoot an email back and say, hey, thank you for reaching out. I understand that you're looking for some free ideas. I'm happy to send them to you. Here are some blog posts that match up with some of the questions you had. Here's a training here's a webinar I'm doing. Here's a whatever, and if at any time you want to continue the conversation, I'm happy to do so. Just know that I get paid for my time. Like, we do, but again, you have to know, am I that firm with everyone in my circle? No, there are absolutely differences to that. You know what I mean? There may be people who I have a personal relationship where I'll be like, yeah, I'll help you brainstorm for minutes. So it just kind of depends. But I think it comes back to clearly communicating that ahead of time so people aren't caught off guard.
Right.
And then you teach people how to treat you.
Right.
And so if you allow people to pick your brain, and then all of a sudden you're like, no, you're not allowed to pick my brain anymore. Like, it's weird. And so you want to set it up so that people understand what's expected. Because people will hit your bar if they know what your bar is.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I like that, it's really about how does that fit into your business model. So where is the free content that you're giving away? So is it on YouTube? Is it in your blogs? Or is it a forum, like I mentioned, that I have on Mondays? So those are some ways that you can actually serve more people, right? And do it in a more passive way rather than taking up more and more of like a valuable amount of time, right?
Absolutely.
We have a limited amount of time in our days.
in this client that we were talking about, what we decided was her line is, if it takes her less time to answer the question than it would for her to generate an invoice, she's happy to answer the question.
Mm.
Because sometimes it's as simple as, oh, here's the name you need, or here's the website we discussed, or something like that. And she says, I am happy to do that. But if it starts to stretch longer than that, then there's an invoice.
Right.
And I like that, as that's where her line in the sand is.
Nice. That's a good rule of thumb. What are some other like rules of thumb, metrics that you look at in terms of boundaries?
It starts with, like, I like to start back at big picture and then try to funnel it back. So it's like, what is it that you're trying to protect?
Mm.
So for me, I know I need to protect my energy. I need to protect my brain in terms of being able to think. And I need to protect that line between my business and my family. So like when I talk like needing to protect my energy, I'm an introvert. So I know that I need to set boundaries in my schedule around how many times I talk to people. Like, as goofy as that seems, like that's
Thanks for talking to me, Lisa.
But like that's a huge thing for me. Like
Yeah.
when we go to the NAWBO conferences, because this can't be a call between the two of us that we don't throw NAWBO in. But like when I go to the NAWBO conferences, I room with someone who is an extrovert. And we, after our first year going, like I said, look, you can go out and hang out and talk to as many people as you want. And at this time, I'm coming back to my room and I'm just no TV, no sound. I just need time to recharge. And if I'm speaking, like there are some people who will speak in the morning and have a client in the afternoon and do this. If I'm speaking, that's it. Like that's all for the day.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. So like those are one of my boundaries. I know that I need to create space for me to be able to think. And so because of that, and because I know left to my own devices, I will say yes to anyone who asks. I use an online scheduler.
Mm-hmm.
And it blocks out times for me to think. Now, it doesn't mean I'm thinking during all those times, but it's giving me space.
You are.
I am. But it's giving me space that's not people,
right.
Which then allows me, a little room. I also block in early things that I know are important to the family, so that I make sure that I create the space around them. It's a work in progress. I am, as many people I think who own their own businesses, started out at least as workaholics, if not are still there.
Oh, yeah. Can I tell you, I hit my workaholic state by week 2 of my business. I already had to change things after like 2 weeks. I was like, okay, I haven't eaten or slept in like 2 weeks. I haven't had a weekend. I mean, literally like did all the wrong things within 2 weeks of starting my business. So I totally get it.
Well, and imagine if you're teaching people not to do that, and then you're doing that. You're like, oh yeah, don't do what I'm doing. Just do what I'm telling you to do. And so I know, like, I'll do really well. And then whenever there's a big change, like just like with my clients, all of this COVID-19 stuff threw me way off my schedule. Mm-hmm. And I started going right back to what you were describing, not having lunch. Weekends look the same as weekdays, like just. And then I was like, ooh, back it up. Take care of yourself.
Let's go back to this question. You were talking about, okay, what are we trying to protect? And we kind of answered that first one, which was, we're trying to protect our energy. So if you're an introvert, you need some time away from people and Zooms to recharge. And then keep going with that. So you had mentioned some other things that you're trying to protect, or people will try to protect, and what can they do about it?
Yeah, so that other one for me is time for my brain. Like I need to build in time to think. Other people, like I'll hear people will say that they're trying to protect their income, meaning not giving, like we talked earlier, not giving it all away for free.
Oh,
putting some boundaries around there. Other people try to protect having time to give back.
mm,
And so they'll say, okay, you know what? I know I want to have X number of hours for volunteer work in a week. That means I need to protect that time, but I also need to be really careful about what else I say yes to.
right.
So I
What do
like
you do? What do you do? Because I know you mentioned also when you're trying to protect that line between your work and your family. So I know you mentioned, you close the door when you're done with your work. So that's probably a big part of it. What other tips do you have for people who are trying to draw that work-life balance line?
So it gets tougher right now because your work and your life. Like I'm thinking, I was like, well, okay, so like I'm thinking through really quickly through my mind are flipping all these clients who are struggling with that right now because their family is home with them
Oh,
while they're trying to work.
right.
So I feel like the answer I would have given you 2 months ago is a little different than the answer now.
Oh,
But it's still about setting those boundaries. So I will give an example here. My husband is home. He's off today. He's home. And I try to not work on his days off when that's possible. However, they just switched his days off. So it turns out today is one of them. And so I had things booked today. And so we talked this morning about, okay, here's what my schedule is that is not, I'm not willing to move, but we have all the rest of this time. How would we like to spend it? And so we kind of co-create that.
okay.
I think another piece about that work-life balance or work-life integration, however you want to think it through or phrase it, is just let people know when you are available and then be a woman or a man of your word. Like if I say, Molly and I are meeting, I'll be done 5 a little bit after, a couple emails to finish up after that, but by 5:30 I'm done and we can have dinner or whatever, then I need to hold true to that.
Good.
However that looks. So whether it's I am not available for the next 3 weeks, like let that never ever be the case, or I'm not available for the next hour, like whatever that is, just be honest and then stick to what you're saying.
Yes.
Which is easier said than done. Like I know that, but that's what I strive to do.
Well, actually, see, this is another reason why I love you so much is because one of my pet peeves is when people like reschedule with you over and over and over and they still expect you to schedule. And it feels like, okay, well, your schedule is not that important, but mine, I'm just going to move it to however I want. And that gets me, and it gets to a point where I probably won't even do business with somebody who does that a lot. If you do that like more than 3 times, my head is already calculating that, okay, you are more likely to flake out on things. You're more likely to, fall short on something, not really live up to what you're saying. So, all of those calculations happen in my head, and I just think it's not worth it.
Right. And so when we talked earlier about the resentment line, there's yours.
That's that.
And, and it's funny because I remember talking about this the first time you and I met. And I remember wondering then, I wonder how many times is too many. And I wonder if 3 is too many for you. Like, I wonder if your bar is 2.
2.
You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if you're like.
I think I have rescheduled to 3, and I can actually, I'm pretty sure of that. 2 is like, you're still on like really good terms. I'm still like, well, that could happen. There's flukes, and your internet could go out. You've lost your whole calendar. Your dog ate your homework, right? Like, so it's all of those things, like, sort of account for those times. 3 times, and I'm like, the universe probably doesn't want us to be together at all.
Right. So, like, you're forgiving up till 2. And then after the second, you're like, yeah, no.
Yeah. No, so I have had 3, though. 3 is like, okay, it's me. I need to like just remember that weird things happen in life. But then after that, I probably won't even schedule.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Wow. So there's your
Number four
resentment
is
part.
like, nah, never mind.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't need that.
Right. Right. And so I think that because we've talked about being a woman of your word.
Yep.
And what you say goes. So I think that's the thing with boundaries. And as we're talking about this, I'm thinking, it is easier said than done. To say, set your boundary and keep it. And build the structure around it. That's, I think, is the easier way to keep your boundaries. I had a client a while ago who gets paid good money, very good money to speak. She's great at what she does and is paid accordingly. And what would happen is someone locally, and she traveled all around the world, and someone locally would say, hey, could you come and just talk 20 minutes to my chamber or my this or my that? And she'd look at her calendar and it would be open and she'd say, sure. And then she'd get this opportunity for this big thing and she'd already given her word to do something small, and she would pass up on the big thing, or she'd try to do both. And, it was, how you can fit things in on paper, but then in the real world, you're rushing and like all this stuff is happening. And so what we decided was she would set a boundary around how many free events would she do a quarter, and what were some other things. So she created this rubric, and it was like, I will do X number of free events a quarter. If I do a free event, like my ideal client needs to be there, like boom, 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 all the way down. And then on the bottom, she had this line, and anything else that's really
And anything
anything else that's really cool or really interesting or really just intriguing. And she added that to the bottom because on the original rubric, we had it set and we're like, all right, we're going to put it in play for 2 weeks. Let's see how it works. And an hour after our call, she gets an email asking her to speak at NATO for this conference. And nothing about that opportunity checked any of the boxes that she would have said yes to.
That's good.
And so she sends me this email. She's like, I just got this thing, but it's not in the rubric. What should I do? And I was like, who would pass down the opportunity to speak at NATO? Like, go and let's just adjust the rubric. But that was her structure because left to her own devices, she said yes to a bunch of things then that would keep her from, the good stuff that kept her from the great stuff. Because good can push out great all day long.
Right.
And so that's one of the structures I suggest is a rubric. What will you say yes to? What will you say no to?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. So I think my question to you is when is it that you recognize that people have an issue with boundaries, or they have boundaries that are getting pushed, and that really, I guess the resentment, part, if that comes up, but what are some other ways that you see it come up?
I'll often see it when people are feeling that their calendar is too tight. So people will say to me, if one more thing comes in my plate, I'll drop all the balls. It looks like I have it all together from the outside, but on the inside, I'm waking up at 2 a.m. because I'm forgetting things. Like all those comments typically mean that your schedule's overpacked, and your schedule's overpacked typically because you struggle to say no, which means you haven't set up what are your boundaries. Like I have never seen a client whose schedule was overpacked with 100% perfect fit things. Like it's good stuff. Like all of my clients come to me with good stuff, but there's not great stuff. So like an example of good versus great, like an example of good would be going to a networking event where a couple of your ideal client are in the room. There's some interesting people there. You like the people. The food's good. Like that's a good thing. You're spreading your word. You're creating brand awareness. You're connecting with a couple people. That's good. Great would be going to a networking event where the room is packed with centers of influence to your ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yet we tend to fill our calendars with way more of the networking opportunities that are a couple of our ideal clients may be at, maybe a center of influence potentially, but we feel good when we go. Versus I'm going into a room and all of those people are connected to my people.
Right.
You know, so that's like good versus great. So to answer your question, like I hear a lot of, I'm so busy, I'm overwhelmed, I have all this stuff on my calendar, what do I do? And that's usually because of boundaries. I mean, sometimes people will come right out and say, yeah, I say yes to everything. I have no personal boundaries. That usually doesn't happen. Usually it's more digging into the symptoms, but every once in a while I'll have someone say, yeah, I just can't.
Let's I'm putting this on the screen because this is how we met, and hopefully it'll come up in a second. Here we go. NAWBONation. So let's let's take a moment, just like as we're wrapping up, to talk about NAWBO. What's something fun that your chapter is doing right now, or how have you adjusted during this COVID-19?
All right, so a couple things that we did. Oh, and if I only I would have done show and tell with you right now. So one of the things that we did was, I don't think I'm going to spoil it for anyone now. So we took a board picture. We were all on Zoom as a board meeting. And so we took our official board picture on Zoom. And then our photographer is a stickler and she didn't like it. So she recreated one that looks like we were all on Zoom, but she took took really good pictures of all of us so that we all looked at our best. And so we sent those out to, we had a personal message to everyone in our chapter, just saying, you know, we're here. Let us know what you need from us. We want to, you know, we want to support you here locally. And then here are some of the things NAWBO National is doing. So we sent them to all of our members. We sent them to some of our members who had just recently fallen off our roster for whatever reason that could be. And then guests who had been with us for the last year, we sent handwritten notes to. So that was one of the things that I was really proud when our board said that was something that they wanted to do. And then we have taken all of our programming virtual. So I think part of what I like the most out of that, there's so many things, so I can't even say like one thing. One of the things I love is that our speakers have been phenomenal. And they jumped in right away and said, we absolutely can take this virtual and we can make it as engaging, if not more so, than we would have in the room. And then we are starting and ending all of our meetings with breakout. We're on Zoom, and so we do breakout rooms.
Yeah.
With 3 people in a room, like they were networking in a restaurant.
Yes.
And so we do, you know, a couple minutes, 5, 6, 7 minutes where they get a chance to talk, and they're randomly chosen. And I have heard after our last couple meetings, people have said, I never would have chosen to go into a breakout room with this person. Not for any bad reason, but just as a, like, I already know her, or, right. You know, and they said the connections that were made in those rooms were crazy good.
That's so awesome.
And so those are some of the things that we're doing. We're excited. And I have a couple of things, and I have this really cool thing we're going to do, but I can't share it now because it's a secret until it happens.
The secret. Cleveland is keeping secrets from us. All right.
So what are you guys doing?
Well, we moved everything virtual, so same sort of thing. And we do love those breakout rooms. They've been amazing. And so in our last big professional development forum, we actually had 3 different breakout rooms, because that way it's as if they're at different tables and they're getting to mingle with different people. And I like to mix it up. I usually have at least one board meeting at every table. And so in each breakout room, somebody who can like lead the discussion. And it's been really fun for me as a facilitator to kind of pop into different meetings. So I'll just like come in and join some of the other meetings. But our last forum was actually a discussion about, how people are adjusting, pivoting during this COVID-19, how people are feeling, what kind of support they need. And so it was really powerful. It was amazing. I think that 56 people signed up for the event. And, I think that it's it's really fun also that we were able to do the live polling. So like in Zoom, they have that feature where you can, you have some multiple choices and you can give that to people and then you can see anonymously live what people are choosing. So like one of the polls that I did was for the next event, what kind of topics do you want to see? And I gave them 4 different choices. And so one of the choices was actually what I had planned for the next event. And I actually changed it because of the outcome. So I saw that, oh, okay, 36% really want to know more about building relationships. And so that's actually going to be the topic of our next forum because of the live polling. And so I do love that we're able to use that and continue to get engagement and a lot of interaction from the members that way. So that's some of the things that we've been doing. And then, like I said, we have that weekly Women Connecting Women virtual community connection event. And that's more like a coffee shop talk. Again, we do use breakout rooms. It's a lot of resource sharing and idea sharing. So that's a great place that people can go if they want to, like pick your brain, or they just have general questions, or they're getting stuck in an area of business development. So that's a really good place to get into the minds of a lot of different business owners. So we're doing that on Mondays. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it.
And I know that so NAWBO's doing a membership drive right now, and they're doing a special promotion of $45 off the initiation fee, which is because it's our 45th anniversary. So pretty amazing. NAWBO has been around for so long. It's great to be part of an organization that has so much history and is doing so much for women in business. And I know that there's a competition, and we were doing pretty well, except for those large chapters. So we're not a large chapter. We actually moved from small to medium. But the large chapters, whew, some of them are just doing, there's like 5 of them who have, right? Did you see that? 5 of the chapters or something like that have 10 new members this month. So, or during the membership drive. So congratulations, super awesome. I don't know if you guys are one of those chapters, but
no, this is the first year in a couple of years that we have not been first or second. And so we have a board meeting and we're going to have a conversation. I'm kidding. But it is, I love the member drive. It brings the competitive out in me. And for me, it's easy to be competitive about the member drive because we're selling such a great organization. Like, it's so easy to say, look, why wouldn't you join? Like, why would you not want to be part of this fantastic organization that supports us, in so many ways?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's been such a pleasure, Lisa. Thank you so much for being my guest today. And thank you to everybody who's been watching. Thanks for all the hearts and love. And we'll see you next time. Bye.